And also at the time, Zach was the #1 rated player in Europe. And so when we signed Zach, it sent a message.
We knew that the first big decision we'd have to make is bringing in a head coach.
A lot of teams, there is this tendency to want to bring over a big name guy or an older famous coach that was established who's now retired. But that wasn't what we wanted to do in Paris. 18 months ago, we called you for the first time, and now we've built this. It hasn't been easy, man.
Hey, everybody. It's been a while, but we are back on the Imported Podcast, and we've got a very special episode for you guys today. Two of the co-owners and managing directors of the Paris Musketeers franchise in the European League of Football, John McKeon and Jason Johnson. They both played football in Europe themselves after playing Division I college football and, as they say, having a cup of coffee in the NFL. If you're a fan of American football in Europe, you might have seen some of John's work on American Football International. He founded and is the CEO of that outlet, the biggest outlet for American football news here in Europe and around the world. And then you might have seen some of Jason's film and video work on the likes of places like ESPN. He does a ton of commercial and video work, things like USA Football, the NFL. He just finished doing a bunch of work in Paris for the Olympics. So these are two guys that have had a lot of success off the field, and they're trying to bring some of that success to the European League of Football and starting their own franchise, the Paris Musketeers, who are in the playoffs in their second ever year of existence. As of recording this today, they are playing in the semifinals tomorrow in Vienna. So John, Jason, and I sat down. We talked all things Paris Musketeers, what it's like to start, try and build an American football program here in Europe, their personal stories, their thoughts on the European League of Football in general. We really just went all over the place for football here in Europe. This is a great episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. John and Jason.
So we are live on the Imported Podcast in Schwäbisch Hall. John and Jason, what is going on, guys? How you doing?
Hey, we're feeling great, man. We're back in the hall, the halls of history here. We got a high-budget background behind us, and, man, it feels good to be here.
Big high-budget show, man.
First time in the hall.
This is your first time?
First time in the hall. Glad to be here. I didn't have the pleasure to ever play Schwäbisch Hall when I was in my time in Europe. I know it's a beautiful town. Glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, man. So, all right, I want to get totally into both of your guys' histories, like your personal football history in Europe and everything, and your guys' stories. But right now, first things first, current events. Paris Musketeers, obviously you guys two of the co-owners, managing owners or managing partners of the Paris Musketeers. Last week, big win over the Munich Ravens. The franchise's first ever playoff win. And then you guys are headed to Vienna in 2 days for the semifinals. Can you talk to me just a little bit about the status of the Musketeers right now, playoffs, what that was like, and what that feels like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start off. I mean, the game against Munich was, we played outside in Valenciennes, outside of Paris, but with the Paralympics going on, it was a challenging situation a little bit. But in 4 days, we pulled off an amazing game. There was 4,000 people there. It was electric, the energy, the excitement. The game was, obviously you called it, it was an amazing game. Back and forth. Munich, they played. That was a great game, great opponent. And, I mean, our guys brought the energy. They came through, they played together. And, that's kind of the track we've been on, playing 11 straight games. And, the energy is high. Like, we're excited, and guys are really excited to go to Vienna.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say not just that we won, but the way we won was incredible. And you and I talked before the show, it's such a good example of what Euro ball can be. And this level of football at the ELF, there weren't a lot of penalties, not a lot of sloppy turnovers and stuff. It was kickoff returns and big runs and great tackles. And, that to me, the atmosphere was crazy in the stadium. Because we were playing 2 hours north of Paris, there was a lot of fans that had literally not just been to a Musketeers game, but never been to a European Football League game.
Our experience was the first time they had actually seen American football. Yeah. So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's a crazy.
And the last 6 to 8 minutes, every fan on their feet, yelling, and they had this what they call the cop area. So in Europe, you have the crazy fans.
Yes.
So this stadium had this actual I don't know, conductor bandstand in front of the crowd. So we had our main leader of the Red Company, which is our Ultras fans. I mean, he's up there with his drum, the entire crowd going nuts. Like I had goosebumps on my arm down the stretch. You know, John disappeared into like his little dark place in the corner. Got a little nervous.
That was crazy.
Hey, those are emotional games when it's like that. Down to the wire, both teams are fighting. You can see the emotion on the field, like, and it travels all the way up to the management and the ownership. Like we live and breathe it with the guys in the field.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, like we talked a little bit about it already, and we'll get into it. But just like all of the work, all of the time, money, effort that people from all the way up at your guys' level and the ownership all the way down to the players have put into the franchise. And that's also something that really impresses me. I mean, some of these franchises, you guys are playing the Vienna Vikings this weekend in the semis. That's a franchise that's been around, an organization that's been around for decades. They have a lot of infrastructure. Granted, they moved from the AFL to the ELF, so that's a little bit different. But starting something from scratch and getting to this point in such a short amount of time, can you guys just talk to me a little bit about that? Like some of the challenges and then some of the successes and breaking through those challenges.
I mean, there's really no challenges. It's just, you know, like, do you want,
it seems easy.
Do you want pain chocolat or a croissant in the morning? Like, that's really it. No, it was actually funny. The game ended and the emotions were so high. And I went up and I got 3 beers, and me, John, and Coach Marc Mattioli just sat there after the game and just like soaked it in and just talked about literally, we call it afterglow. It's like this thing from my grandpa. And we just literally said, do you remember literally 18 months ago, we called you for the first time and now we've built this and had this experience. It was really cool, but it hasn't been easy, man. There are so many people working nonstop, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. You know, we have 3 sort of managing owners from the U.S., myself, John, and a guy, Patrick Butler, in New York City. And then obviously, you know, our French partners, you know, Marc-Angelo Suma and Francis Dorleon, like they're working nonstop in Paris and countless staff to play. Football is an army. You know what I mean? It is not. It's funny. My my main job is filming documentaries. I work with a lot of basketball teams. They're like Navy SEALs. It's like a small group of like select specialists. Like football, it's like you got the cavalry, you got the generals, you got the support staff. Like it's a lot. And so for us to not only make the playoffs, but to show up like that and win and now move on, like it makes it all worth it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way of putting it, man. John, you got anything else on that?
Yeah, I mean, like 18 months ago, this was an idea. Like there was no Musketeers, there was no white cross on a blue field, there was no, there was nothing. It was like, we think that there's an opportunity in Paris for a professional American football structure, and how are we going to do it? And that was 18 months ago, and here we are. Or no, 2 years ago now. 2 years ago now, and here we are, like with a team, with a group of guys that love each other, bust their ass for each other every day, coaches that built a program from nothing, and to be in the semifinals is kind of the culmination of that work. So we're really proud.
It's awesome, man. It shows, and you touched on, like, it shows the potential of the league with such a great game like that between you guys and Munich, but then it also shows what franchises can do, new franchises can do, like the potential of actually being a successful, well-run franchise like quite quickly if you get the right people involved and you have all these people working towards it. Then I do want to talk about the semi-final in a little bit. We're going to touch on that, talk about the Vienna Vikings, the showdown this week in Vienna. But you guys are both pretty uniquely positioned as individuals to do this, to have started the Paris Musketeers because of your history, your football history, your history of football in Europe. So can you guys just, for the people who don't know, give your football background or just your background in general and what has kind of led you to this European football world?
Yeah, I mean, I played at North Carolina State, NC State. I was Phillip Rivers left tackle in college, and it was a D1 big time program. And after that, I kind of did the route of had a cup of coffee in the NFL, bounced around to a couple minor leagues in North America, and found myself in 22 years old and not sure if I was going to play football ever again. And it's a common position I think a lot of imports have, and or not, guys who played in the U.S. that didn't make the league, and a guy called me up. My agent had put me in a database. I ended up in Finland, never traveled before, playing for the Helsinki Roosters in 2008, and it really opened up my eyes to the world of international American football in a way that was unknown to me and unknown to most players in the U.S. and probably around the world. And so after an awesome season there, great small organization there in Helsinki, classic winning team, really enjoyed my summer there and playing both ways and just really fell back in love with football. It was one of those situations. And almost as soon as I had gotten home, I had gotten a call to return to Europe from a different team, and that call was from Patrick Azume, who was my head coach at the Flash de la Courneuve in Paris the following year in 2009. So, and I played that year. We played, the Euro Bowl season at the same time as we played in the French season. We played 18 games. We reached all the way to the finals, and that was 2009 Euro Bowl, Paris Flash versus the Tyrol Raiders, the Swarco Raiders, and Jason Johnson here was the quarterback of those Swarco Raiders.
Just so happens.
Yeah. Ironically.
And after that season, it was an amazing spring and summer in Europe, playing with the Flash and getting to travel. I went to Moscow. I played the Vienna Vikings. We went everywhere, and we played a lot of football. And that's actually where I met Marc Angelo and Franzi, who were my teammates on that team in Paris. So I returned to the United States. I wasn't sure what my path forward with football was. And I realized that there was a void for American football information in the United States.
Yeah.
No one knew of what was happening in Europe at the time. There was this grassroots, growth, these great organizations that I'd been a part of or played against. But I'd come home and it was like it didn't exist. So I basically created AmericanFootballInternational.com. It was a website. Started kind of more as a blog, and it's turned into a little lifestyle business for me on the side that allows me and my small team to kind of spread the news of international American football, most of it in Europe, and its growth. And it's really been what has kept me connected to the game since I stopped playing back in 2009. And it's also what kind of led me to the opportunity with the league, the European League of Football, which, through my connection with Patrick Azume, I reached out to him. I was interested in getting involved, and then he basically pointed me back to Marco and Franzi and said, "These guys are trying to get something going in Paris. Why don't you go meet with them?" And I met with them. I took the idea back to the U.S., took it to Jason, who we'd been buddies for a while at this point, and me and Jason got to work and tried to figure it out.
Did your friendship start after you played against each other? Did you guys talk after the game then, or what? What happened?
The thing is, we didn't even meet at the game.
Really? Okay.
We didn't even meet. And of course, I was the import quarterback on the Raiders, and John played offensive line. So we obviously didn't I wasn't studying John. Right. I was aware that they had an American import quarterback and lineman, but I didn't know John. And we win the championship, and it's confetti and champagne bottles, and they're obviously disappointed, and for whatever reason we didn't connect. But it was actually, I think it was 2 years later, it was the 2011 World Championship of Football back in Austria, the men's tackle IFAF World Championship. And at that time, we'll get to my career or whatever, but I had started a video production business when I got done playing, and I was filming a documentary on that championship for USA Football. And I think I was talking to Roger Kelly, of all people, and Roger Kelly was like, "Hey, do you know John?" And he's like, "I think he might have been when you were." And I think we talked, and within 3 minutes we put two and two together, and it's crazy. And so that's the crazy thing, is that the origin story of the Paris Musketeers really starts on a field in 2009 in Austria, Innsbruck, Austria, Swarco Raiders, Tyrol playing the Paris Flash, and Patrick Azume is the coach. I'm the quarterback of the Raiders. My import receiver, Matt Epperson, is one of our founders and investors. John, Marco, and Franzi playing on their team, and Patrick's the coach, and it's in our blood, man. And once it's in your blood, it's hard to get out.
I know. That's what we were talking about out there in the town. Once you get a little taste of this European American football world, and you fall in love with it, it's hard to forget about it. And that's why it's been so cool just to see what you guys are doing. And it's pretty inspiring also to see for guys who finish playing football, how you can still stay involved in so many different ways here in Europe, and I think that's really cool. So, Jason, then give us your football background. One sec, real quick.
We will edit this out.
We'll edit this out.
We're gonna go to commercial break. Well, who's your big sponsor?
This is sponsored by Quiver. Right here. There we go.
Man, I love using the Quiver app. Like, I've had so many breakthroughs. Like, if you haven't tried it yet, Quiver, check it out. 1 question a day, 9 a.m. A little bit of mindfulness.
You are a good spokesman. Yeah, that's right. But totally natural.
I swear, I've read it about it on a shirt or something. But
that's good.
Yeah. So my football journey really almost began before I was born. My grandfather was a longtime Division III football coach. His name's Frosty Westering, Pacific Lutheran University.
PLU. Okay.
PLU. Playing the likes of Linfield, Willamette,
yes.
All these Oregon schools in what was called the Northwest League. So I was a ball boy since I was about knee high.
Yeah.
So football was in my hand, and basically they're like, try the other sports, but you kind of have to play football. Mm-hmm. And so grew up, played quarterback pretty much because I couldn't play anything else. Like, I was slow. I'm not big. I don't like to tackle. I'm like, okay, other than holder, like, I better be a quarterback. So I went to the University of Arizona. Started 2 years there. We won the Holiday Bowl, finished 4th in the nation my first year, and played with a lot of great guys, great coaches that have gone on. And I got signed Buffalo Bills, was up there for my cup of coffee.
There you go.
Made the team as a practice squad. First game we beat Tom Brady and the Patriots. And I'm like, oh, this is easy. I'm like, this is awesome.
This is easy.
Drew Bledsoe was the starting quarterback. All this cool football experiences. And then got released. Wasn't sure what I was going to do. I actually spent that off season. I went out and I ran the Hula Bowl All-Star game for college that I played in a year before. So that's really where I got my first dose of football management. Was running the Hula Bowl. I was the quarterback the year before for that. And then I signed with the Edmonton Eskimos in the CFL. 2004, so I went up and played 3 seasons in the CFL. We won the 2005 Grey Cup, which was an amazing run. And our starting quarterback was the guy Ricky Ray, maybe the most established all-time CFL passer. And then our number 2 quarterback with him is the guy Jason Moss. And so my quarterback and my head coach from that team are now the head coach and GM of the Montreal Alouettes.
Damn. And
they just won the Grey Cup and longest winning streak in CFL history. Yeah. So, man, greatness finds its way.
Yes, it does.
But so I played in the CFL. But while I was playing in the CFL, I'm like this serial entrepreneur. So I had my hand in 10 other things. Yeah. So I started a video production company, started filming documentaries. My first big documentary was on our team while I was playing, which was
so funny, man.
I feel like some other people have done that.
That's an interesting thing. Who would do that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I didn't know. That's okay. We got to talk more about that.
Yeah, there's a lot about that. I had questions on how you did it. And then, I got to the point, where, I was having all these opportunities come my way, and I'm like, maybe it's time for me to grow up and put football aside. And obviously the CFL salaries aren't big or whatever. So I retired at 27 from, CFL football. I was still the number 2 quarterback in the CFL, and I started a TV production company. I was the director of marketing for a big 300-store smoothie chain called Booster Juice, the Canadian version of Jamba Juice. And I was living this, professional life for about a year. Yeah. And a good buddy of mine, his name's Peter Hansen, he was a coach at Stanford at the time, called me up and he's like, hey, have you heard of American football in Europe? And I was like, I actually have. My brother played quarterback here in Schwäbisch Hall.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So my brother was really one of the Unicorns' first imports.
Yeah, because they didn't start getting imports late 90s.
Yeah, late 90s. They'd had maybe 1 or 2 guys. Yeah. My brother came over. My brother had won the D3 Heisman, and then Ziggy found him and flew him over. And my brother, and so that was actually 2002 was my first year starting at Arizona. And I remember playing at Arizona. I kept seeing these stories of my brother at medieval castles, and then they're traveling to Prague, and then they're down in the Cinque Terre, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And so sure enough, a year after leaving football at age 28, I looked at my wife and I'm like, you know what? There's an itch I still got to scratch. And so I headed over to Italy, to the Italian Football League in your Catania Elephants.
Let's go Sicily.
Sicily. Davide Giuliano was our coach, who has gone on to be big in Italian football. And we had a great season. And I remember we lost in the semifinals. And one of these like crazy games, like we had no defense in Italy.
Yeah.
Like basically like the 11 best guys all played offense. Yeah. And I think we lost like 64-48. Someone's got to fact check this. We onside kicked every time because we couldn't stop them on D. And I remember walking off that field and it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And also like my competitive juices were like flowing again. Yeah. So I was like, all right, I experienced the Dolce Vita. I lived in Italy. Like I only wanted to go to Italy. I didn't want to go to any other country at first. But then I'm like, all right, where's the best football in Europe? And where is it most competitive? And at the time, Austria and Germany were the two powerhouses. And so, the Raiders were like number one. Vikings were number two. Yeah. Braunschweig was really good. Paris was good. So, played 2009 and had a blast in Austria. And then walked off the field last game against John. So it's pretty cool.
Crazy, man. It's so cool to see like all the different experiences, even like playing in Sicily and in like, southern Italy. And it's so funny how small the European football world is. Just like Davide Giuliani, who was your head coach down there, he was my head coach of the Italian national team 10 years later, 11 years later, whatever it was. And so it's really cool just to see all the people still involved in this world.
And also, not to cut you off, but like to see how far it's come, right?
Yes.
Like, we played these games in Sicily, and like, I started a blog, and like I would call, kind of like on Flight of the Conchords, I would call my wife our fan base because like I wanted to disguise the fact that we literally almost only had one fan,
So good.
And like I'm walking into Davide and I'm like, all right, we don't charge admission, like we don't like, we're not in the newspaper, like how do you guys pay for all this? And it was just literally the goodness of their heart and trying to grow the game and a few local businesses that help finance it. And to see now to play in a stadium this weekend with over 10,000 fans and, television in multiple countries, not just Austria, but, this game will be on Austria and Germany and France and around the world and have the Game Pass, and to see how far it comes and to see now that there is a true opportunity for these players to not only play at a high level, but to make a living, to use this as a springboard to bigger things, and to experience and really for kids to grow up now and dream in Europe and say, I could be an American football player.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's what's so cool. And I think back to even Goran Zec, who was a Serbian safety, and he came from the Serbian league a few years ago, and he actually played with us here in Schwäbisch Hall. And then when the ELF started, he came here, played for free. And then when the ELF started, he got an opportunity to become a professional football player. So a kid from Serbia grew up and then became a full-time professional football player. So the ELF giving these opportunities, and then just seeing young kids being able to look at that, man. But it is crazy. It's so cool to see kind of the combination now of, all right, how much it's grown, how legit it is, how professional it is with the ELF. But then there's also still that little element of what you talked about with the team in Sicily. Like there still is that element in European football of just that purity of people like building it up because of the love of the game. And that's also what I think both of you guys said, that you kind of fell back in love with football coming out here. And I think the combination of that is just so cool. Speaking now of the ELF, what do you guys think the ELF does well? What excites you about the European League of Football?
Yeah, I mean, I think the media is doing a great job. Maxie, yourself. I mean, part of what makes the NFL successful, or major college football in the U.S. are the stories, the coverage, that's with AFI. I mean, at a very amateur level, we try to put out even just print information or digital information about the same thing. But to have kind of like, there's a constant flow and stream of media that needs to kind of like really tell the stories, because the stories are amazing. I mean, we're telling our stories, but like I've watched a lot of your stuff, and all across Europe, every single team, top to bottom, the story of, Zach Edwards or, Kenny Fleuret or safety. Like, it's like across the board, you could put one of these guys in front of a camera and a microphone, and like their stories are inspiring and impressive. So I think the EFL does a really great job with the media. And then I think they're doing something that hasn't been done before. I mean, we're doing something that hasn't been done before in Paris. It's startup football. That's what the league is doing at a scale, and it's impressive and it's challenging, but somebody has to do it, and it's to get us where we need to go.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I would kind of piggyback off that to be like, if I could say the ELF did one thing, it showed that it could be possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was a lot of people that talked about this, and there's a lot of haters out there. There's a lot of people that want to see the ELF fail. Yes. To be honest, like, don't look online because you'll find them. And a lot of people they come at the league, or they question Patrick Azume or these other people for some of their decisions or choices. But it's like, these guys are doing it, and there's that famous quote about is it the critic that counts, or is it the man in the arena? And you know what? They ponied up the money, they put in the time, and to see football played at this level and to be covered the way it is, to have every single 107 games you can click and you can see. It's not easy, to broadcast games in Budapest and Milan and Paris in the same weekend, and to coordinate all of that. It's a Herculean task that people don't realize. And yeah, we're in our fourth year. Like, there are going to be growing pains, right? It's only the second year of our team, the fourth year of this league. But John and I have something that we've really kind of sat on, and it's something our investors believe in. Is, football in Europe, American football, is inevitable. Yes. Like, it's coming. And you look at the MLS 25 years ago, everyone's judging our league, and they drop things like, well, in the Bundesliga or in the NFL. And I'm like, the NFL's 100 years old. You have 6 generations of fans that are now fans. Fans in America are now born as Giants fans or Eagles fans. And that's barely starting to happen here. And you look at the teams in this league, Frankfurt and Rhein and Hamburg, that now are getting that second generation of fan because of the World League. And that's why they're getting 10, 15,000 fans at a game. And last night we sat and had dinner with Mason, the owner of Prague, and I said, hey, can you realistically see 10, 15,000 people at a game in Prague? He goes, absolutely. They show up for basketball. They show up for hockey. It's going to happen. It's just we need time to run, and then I think there's a couple milestones that are going to fast forward this game forward 10, 20 years.
Absolutely, 100%. And I love that. The NFL's 100 years old. I actually looked up the stat because I get so annoyed when I see the haters and the people trying to chop down the league and trying to chop down people who are trying to build something new. If you're a fan of football, in Europe, you should be absolutely rooting for this league. So I don't get it, but anyway, on the ELF,
in the fifth year of football, running backs were dying.
Yes,
Congress had to meet and say too many running backs don't have helmets, and there actually is too much death in this game. They've come that far, and look at the first Super Bowl, man. Half the stadium's empty and no one knows what it is, and and I think that's what you're doing, Nick. For us as owners is so we really appreciate you, and we appreciate you telling the stories of these guys and being out front and not being afraid to speak truth about these guys, because it is the stories. You know what I mean? In the NFL, all week long they hype up the story. Right? And when you go into that game, you know exactly what's at stake for Aaron, I was going to say Aaron Rodgers. That is his name.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers.
I thought his name was not Aaron Rodgers. Lamar Jackson is playing Aaron Rodgers. Is Lamar Jackson's legacy? Could he ever and I think we need to do that more. And I think we've done some of that as a franchise, and we've really tried to invest in media and storytelling, and it's the tip of the iceberg, man. Like John said, these guys on our team, I look from top to bottom of our roster, and when you look at a guy like Maceo Beard and follow his story, I mean. And some of these guys now are having opportunities to go elsewhere, and they're choosing to stay in Europe and play. And it's so exciting.
That's incredible. And yeah, that's 100% what the thing is, the stories. And we as human beings are story just resonates with us intrinsically. And that's what, to combine storytelling and sports, it's so important. And the Paris Musketeers do a great job of that. And but the thing that I wanted to say also is, in the NFL, of course, you have a lot of different unique stories, but a lot of the guys that end up playing in the NFL, they played high school football, they then played college football, and then they play in the NFL. It's very linear. It's very kind of predictable. Of course, there are, different turns and twists and turns for these players, but a lot of the guys that play here in Europe have magnificently unique stories. They're working a full-time job and then driving an hour to practice after work, and getting home at 1 a.m. on a work day. Who maybe are a couple of guys on the Paris Musketeers that you would like to highlight, that you think have an interesting story, that you're just impressed with kind of their football journey, be it an American import or a homegrown European guy?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple, and then John, you can give a couple. I look at a guy. He had a pick six the last game of the year, Maxime Roger, one of our safeties, and he actually last year was the first year he ever got to be an import. He was in Tyrol, but this guy just lives, breathes football, but his day job is like water quality in Paris. And he was part of the effort to make the Seine River swimmable for the Olympics.
Really?
So I was asking him, I'm like, how are the E. coli levels? He's like, let's just talk about football right now. And you look at some of these other guys, like John said, a guy like Kenny Flore, he drives trucks or buses in his off time. Yeah. And these guys have just, they'll do whatever to make it work, And then, but I also look at the imports. I look at a guy like Dawson Dales, or whose dad was a coach, and he grew up as a coach, and his off seasons he spends coaching in the States. This guy lives and breathes football. I mean, Zach Edwards, amazing story. He's voted #1 player in Europe, and at the off season a couple years ago he's driving a FedEx truck.
Wow.
And I hooked up with him in Minnesota, as we were recruiting him, and I rode around with him in his FedEx truck. And it's minus 20 degrees in Minnesota the week of Christmas. He's driving an Amazon truck, I'm sorry. And it was just so inspiring to see how hard he worked. No one knows who he is. And then he comes over to Europe, he's a household name. It's so cool.
I love that. That would be good. That would be such a good documentary, or a short piece on Zach Edwards doing that. That's incredible. What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give my offensive line guys a little credit.
Nice.
It's going to go down
big
the line
boys.
all the way.
Give them love.
No, I mean, John Booker has done an amazing job recruiting our offensive line this year. It's one of the areas across the board, I think, in Europe that needs development in order to kind of take this level to the next game across the board. And we recruit, three offensive linemen, import offensive linemen. We have some amazing French offensive linemen and some great young French offensive linemen. I'll talk a little bit about the Sacramento Paulus Sacramento is from Brazil. He's been with us for 2 years. I mean, guys, the hardest worker and puts his head down. So happy to be there. I mean, guys, all these guys are so grateful and so happy to have an opportunity here to play with us in Paris. Lewis Thomas from the UK, and Thomas Felicia, who played with Milan. He's played all over Europe, and a lot of these guys. I mean, just to segue to that, but we brought a lot of guys back to Paris this year that were playing all over Europe. And I think, in our first year, people were a little suspicious or cynical and like, oh, can they do it in Paris? What's it going to be like? Is it going to be professional? And I think because of how well we treated our guys in the first year, it really kind of helped us recruit a lot of these French guys that were playing in other ELF teams or in other leagues around Europe to come back to play for us in Paris. And that includes Thomas Felicia, that includes Anthony Mahangu, includes Maceo Beard. I mean, you go down the list of all these guys. Kevin Wamba. I mean, Kevin Wamba, I would not. That guy, he is so strong. He is so passionate. He is so fiery. That is a guy that I will go to war with any day. And and our team is full of those guys. And they work for each other. They bleed for each other. And I can't speak highly enough about them.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of that, if people ask why is Paris in the semifinals, and I really feel like it's this culture that starts with Coach Marc Mattioli. It goes through our assistant coaches like Mark Booker or John Booker and Max Kessler and Frank and Jimmy and our other guys. But really, honestly, it's the French leaders that came back. When we already had this amazing core, but to then add Anthony Mahangu, Kevin Mamba, Maceo Beard, Thomas Felicia. Now all of a sudden you have some of your most talented guys that are the hardest workers that care the most. We have just we call it Victory Monday, and guys come back up to the facility and they lift and they run together and stuff, and we got 26, 30, 35 guys there on a Monday the day after a game. We have tried to create this culture where it's not about the other team, it's about us. And I know people have heard this say that, and it's it truly is about the guys in the room and the culture that's being built. And when guys start to play for each other and not for money or fame and for external reasons, but because they care about the guy next to them, you've seen that with teams. It changes everything.
That's where things can get really special. And it's cool to see that you guys did pull a lot of these elite French players back from other teams back to play in Paris. And I think there's something really, really special for players, especially who get to, like, they're representing their country as well. You guys are the only French team in the ELF. So these guys,
we don't need any more. We're good. We're good on French teams.
You guys are putting, like, these guys get to feel like they're putting on for their football team, but also kind of putting on for their country. And I know even there's a little Germany-France rivalry in a lot of different sports and stuff. And you look back to last weekend's, playing against Munich and winning against that German franchise that probably felt really good for those guys. You touched on it. Coach Marc Mattioli. I think he's the second youngest head coach in the ELF. And he's a high energy guy. I'm wondering, when you guys were starting this franchise and you were trying to decide who's going to be the first coach that leads this team, what was that process like? What led you to Coach Marc Mattioli?
Well, we just look at John's family, and we're not. I'll let you tell it. It's good.
Big ton of Johns.
It is kind of a funny story. So, we, as soon as they made the announcement on, or maybe it was before the announcement was made.
Yeah.
It might have been like a week or two before they actually announced the Paris franchise. We knew that the first big decision we would have to make is bringing in a head coach. And, I think we were of the mind, when we started looking, is like we wanted someone who knew Europe, and we wanted someone, young and passionate and like with a fire for us going forward. So that was kind of our criteria when we started.
Yeah, let me say one thing. Yeah, because like a lot of teams, like there is this like tendency to want to bring over like a big name guy or an older famous coach that was established who's now retired and stuff, and that works. Look at like Madrid, look at Jim Tomsulo, you look at these other guys, but that wasn't what we wanted to do in Paris.
Right.
So, sorry,
yeah. No. That's great context. And I don't know if I want to. It might be telling people that we talked to Andrew Weidinger.
Yeah.
We talked to Jordan.
Yeah.
We were talking to everybody.
Right.
And so Marc Mattioli he's a second cousin of mine. My grandfather and his grandmother were brother and sister, but we did not know each other. That's crazy. Like we had probably been at a family barbecue when we were kids, but like we did not know each other. We did not follow each other's careers. We hadn't. I think maybe had spoken casually over messages before.
He was coach of the year on AFI.
Yeah, he was one of our coach of the year in AFI with Parma. So I knew about him. He knew about me, but like we were not bros or anything like that. So anyway, Jason and I set up a call with him, to say, hey, we'd like to talk to you, get on the phone, whatever. No context. Yeah. Jason and I get on the phone, and he hasn't seen me in a long time. So he gets on the Zoom call. He's looking at Jason. He starts talking to Jason like he's me.
No. Well, first of all, I got on the Zoom call first. You were like 5 minutes delayed. I still remember I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, doing something with Tennessee, and I got on the Zoom call, and Mark pops up, and he thinks I'm John. So he's talking to me like I'm John, but then also he actually thinks it's like an AFI interview. So he's like asking me like these questions, like what do you do, like where are you from, do our cousins know each other? And I'm like, I'm Jason. And he's like, well, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I work with John on this project. He's like, oh. And it was so funny. Like the first 5 to 10 minutes of this call were like really confusing. And then suddenly, yeah.
So I end up getting on the call, and I say, I kind of introduce, kind of roughly what we're doing. I don't tell them anything, and I said, so we are, we're interviewing for the head coach of the Paris Musketeers or Paris football team franchise. There was no Musketeers at this point.
Yeah, there's no name.
And Mark's face goes from like he's totally caught off guard, and I didn't reveal it ahead of time.
He's like, oh, I'm in an interview now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's a
meter chick.
Yeah. No, but I mean, it was just it was really funny interaction. Like he had no idea that was what it was about. But I mean, from that call, we hit it off really well. He interviewed with Marc Angelo, our GM, and Marc Angelo loved him. And it was very soon after. You got to make a decision quickly. It's the first important decision of your organization, and we definitely hit it out of the ballpark on that one.
Yeah, I remember like saying to him like once we made the offer and he accepted and we were ready to like get rolling on things, I was like, well, how do we contact you, whatever. He's like, bro, we're gonna talk 100 times a day and we're gonna build a team. We're like, let's go. And like literally we had our first personnel meeting like 2 hours later. I was actually in Korea. We're like getting up at 2 a.m. and, making our list of, every French player that was in the ELF that wasn't, that where were they playing? Who were they playing for? We ended up then, starting to talk to those guys. We held a combine, had almost 300 players come out. And, it was so funny. Literally last week, we were just getting ready for our first playoff game. And Mark pulled up this document that was literally headshots of all these guys and our initial like evaluation of them from 2 years ago. And like we had all these like nicknames for guys because like we didn't know who they were yet.
Were there any that you look back that you were kind of wrong on, any guys, or guys that you were just dead correct on that you remember?
There was probably what do you say, a third of our team was from that tryout, maybe. I mean, Florian LaRose, receiver. I remember Waji Saeed.
Like guys who just jumped off they jumped off the
Dada, was it that?
Yeah, Davidson La Rochelle.
Dylan Eustache.
I mean, probably
half our O-line. Yeah. Probably were from that.
Team, Wally Kamara, Max Gay, like a lot of guys that are on the team. I think that really kind of set the tone, I think, for what we were trying to do.
Not to interrupt. Sorry, I remember because that was an indoor. It was indoors, right? And I remember like after Paris football team is announced, and that was one of the first things that I saw. And I remember thinking, this combine looks really, really legit. Also, the media from it looks really, really legit. This Paris franchise might be doing something right. They might be off on the right foot, and that was like the first impression.
Well, and there's a stadium in Paris called La Défense Arena, which is where we had it, which is like the 20,000 seat indoor rugby stadium of a team racing 92. Like when Taylor Swift came to Paris, that's where she did her concert. Like it's a dope arena, and it would be amazing to play there one day. To have it indoors with this like amazing lighting and dark lit, it was really cool. And the funny thing is, so my background, is in television production, director, producer, camera guy, editor, whatever. But I held my own combine that day for the media. Yeah. So what we did is we put it out, and because I knew it's going to be so important for us how we tell the story of this team. So I sent it out and I said, listen, we're not paying anyone for the combine. This is your tryout too. Yeah. I think we had like 25, 30 photographers. Like we have so many pictures.
Way.
And we actually had a few different social media teams come out. And that's where we met Ito for the first time. Our social media guy was there, and we got some unbelievable photos, but there's one guy, his name's Maxime Lapahif, and he's that day I'm like, this is the image and look of our team, and he's been our team photographer ever since.
Was did he do these photos that you guys just posted from the last game that like have a little bit of there's one of Dawson I think you reposted.
Yeah. That's Nicholas. That's another guy. I mean,
all of your guys.
The cool thing about being in Paris, and I'll touch on something else that we did that ties into this, is there's such a cool creative community in Paris. I mean, it's a world-class city, but it's full of artists. I mean, literally dating back to like the Middle Ages, and Paris has always been a place for artists to go and paint, and Van Gogh impressionism and stuff. And so we knew there was a good group of people there. But when we set out to form the team, before we even did a logo or a name or a brand, one of our investors and consultants is a guy, Yogi Roth. Mm-hmm. He's on Big Ten Network right now, former Pac-12 guy, receiver that played at Pitt, Larry Fitzgerald's roommate in college. And Yogi is the most connected, mindful, thoughtful guy ever. And he goes, hey, as you guys are putting this together, there's a guy I know. His name's Ken Black. I want you to just do a call with him. That's it. So we did a call with Ken. Ken was like one of the early Nike creatives. Yeah. He's designed Jordans. He started team sports at Nike. I mean, unbelievable thinker.
The Steelers uniform redesign. Damn. Yeah. The Broncos uniform redesign. Like this guy, he had a team sports at Nike. Basically did redesigns of NFL uniforms that you see today.
Yeah, and so we talked to Ken, and I remember like in our like eagerness, we like jumped on and we wanted to just like talk colors, logos, names, all this stuff. And he goes, boys, do you know that a logo is just an outer representation of an inner belief? And we're like, whoa, mind blown. He's like, why don't you come down to my house in Palm Springs and we'll spend a weekend? And we went down there, and it's like, we've said that like part of this ownership journey, I'll call it, is not just wins on the field, but it's like these experiences that we've had of like building this team. And so we went down to Palm Springs for the weekend, John, Patrick, and I, and we sat around the pool. And Ken, he's the best person I've ever met at like distilling what you're actually saying. Yeah. So like we're talking about what we're doing, and he's like, all right, first we start with values. So the very first thing we did for the Paris Musketeers is we established the 6 values that our team stands for. And like I can still rattle them off. And the first was storytelling, right? We're storytellers, right? The second thing is electric, right? We want it to be exciting. Like it has to, we talked about that feeling when you walk into a stadium and you can hear the band and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
You know, it was like, woo! You know, I think of like, you know, walking into LSU at night or playing Penn State on a whiteout game. And like, so electric was our second value. You know, our third value that we talked about was premium. Like, you know, and Ken is such a wordsmith. It wasn't luxury. You know, we had all these words and he's like, well, you know what? Like you can have a $10 pen, but it can be a nice pen. We all have a favorite pen, right? Mm-hmm. So he's like, you know, and a Starbucks can be like a cup of good Starbucks coffee. Like it's premium. Right. It's not $100, but it's not $2. So like we wanted it to be a little elevated, right? You know, we have other values, but the fourth one that Patrick came up with, and he's like the adult in the room sometimes, but also like the fun one. And our fourth value is salubrious.
Okay, you're going to have to define that.
You're going to have to cut to a full screen definition of salubrious. Basically, salubrious is like cheers, like life-giving. Like you would have a salubrious drink with a friend.
Yeah.
Like
okay. Is it celebratory?
Yeah, celebratory joy.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Celebratory joy, because you know, like
if you are not enjoying yourself when you're playing football, then what are you doing?
Yeah. And if we're not enjoying it, and we have to remind ourselves, so like a lot of like what we do.
You know, football can be hard and serious, and let's all like, you know, yell and scream and like be angry all the time. No, it's like we're here for each other. We're here to win. We're here to be happy. We're here because we love football. Yes. You know, I don't know if you watch any of the receiver.
Oh yeah.
George Kittle. How great is football?
Incredible.
Like I love football.
I love football.
Yes. You know, like, that's a trait that we want to share in our organization to stand for.
Yeah, and then there's just 2 last ones. I might as well finish it out. Was, you know, our fifth one was ambitious. Like, and you can see by everything we do is we're not just out here to try. We're out here to accomplish a goal and to grow football. And our last one was culturally real. Yeah. And it was so funny because we were like, okay, we're an American sport playing football in France. So we like threw out, okay, we want the team to be French. And he's like, well, it's still American football. Yeah. You don't want it to just be French, but you also don't want it to just be American. And even us as owners with French owners and American owners, like we want it to be culturally real. We want the football part of it to be American and celebrate those values, but we don't want to like diminish the French culture and the beautiful parts of France. And so, and when you put those 6 values together, it starts to guide your decisions. What stadium are we going to play in? Well, is this stadium electric or not? Is it premium or not? Can you tell stories here? And the funny thing is what Ken showed us is like once you have those 6 values, they work together and you kind of need them all, right? Because like if it's ambitious and premium and all this stuff, but it's not salubrious, if it's not fun, then like you're taking yourself too seriously. And if it's just kind of like fun and all about that, whatever, but you're not trying to win, then what's it all about? So that's where we started.
I absolutely love that. One of the things, the culturally real, and I think you guys do a really good job about that, but can you talk about choosing then the name Musketeers, also because for those who don't know, you guys were named the Saints for a while, and then it changed. Can you tell the story of that?
So, so I mean, we were the Paris football team, and, you know, there's a lot of, you know, legal clearances that need to happen. You can't just pick a name out of the hat and call yourself whatever you want, especially in Europe and in France. You know, there's Musketeers have been around since 1400s or 1300s. Like that name, Le Mousquetaire de Pari, has been around for centuries. And when we did our little exploration on who we wanted to be, it was something we thought that was, you know, culturally real to Paris, to France, to our identity as soldiers, warriors, you know, fighting for each other, a unit, a group, a specialized unit. So
they also like to have fun, right?
Yeah.
They're swashbucklers. I mean, they have guns and swords. Yeah.
So, you know, when it was a name that we wanted to be from the beginning. But you can't, like I said, you can't just pick and choose exactly what you want always. And so we had to have options, and legal clearances took a little bit longer than some of our other deadlines. So we needed to have a backup, and we went. The Saints was kind of a short-term fix until we were able to get the clearances. And once we were able to get the clearances, which we weren't sure we were ever going to be able to get. Once we got them cleared and we were legally 100% okay to move forward and trademark our name and be the Paris Musketeers from that day forward, we swapped to where we wanted to be, and that's who we are.
It's really, really cool to hear all the behind-the-scenes stuff, because as a person who's kind of consumed the Paris Musketeers from afar, like seeing what you guys have done on the football field, but then also the social media stuff, and then just to hear the behind the scenes and the mindset and the thinking of it makes a lot of sense. And I just have to say, I feel like you guys are doing such a good job with that, and it's just very, very cool to see. Going back a little bit to kind of the football aspect of it, you talked about getting Coach Marc Mattioli, and we talked about there are different philosophies in the ELF that teams do, is go for the old established guy that's got a name and coach D1 or NFL football, or the European guy. And when we look here in the semifinals of the ELF right now, 3 of the coaches are those kind of European guys, American guys who have the experience in Europe. Kalaikai, Newman, Mattioli, and then the 4th is, of course, Tom Sula. He's got the American experience. But then when you guys decided to get your first quarterback, obviously you get the head coach, you get Mattioli, and then one of the next pieces is going to be your import quarterback. Was that also a factor in your decision that you didn't want to go pluck a new guy out of the States? You wanted an American import quarterback that's been here in Europe, or did it just so happen to play out this way?
Yeah, I mean, this was a little personal for me. Yeah. Well, I first I talked to Dan Marino. And,
was he interested?
Well, he's like, I can only play from the gun. No, I actually joking. Dan Marino was like my idol growing up. But yeah, no, I think being a quarterback who's played in Europe, I understood that there is a big transition from playing American football in a high D1, NFL, CFL type level to making this transition. And you see it week in and week out. Yes. It's to varying degrees of success, and it's a different style of ball over here. And I feel like, honestly, almost the number one characteristic that we look for is a German word, Spielmacher, playmaker, right?
There we go.
Like I slipped that in there.
Yeah.
And honestly, that word Spielmacher, it's like the coolest word. And my brother taught me that when he played in Germany, because I kept reading these newspaper articles and there's Spielmacher, Chad Johnson. And I was like, dude, what does that mean? He's like, it literally means playmaker. And I think when we started to look for a quarterback, and I think for the Americans that are successful over here, it's not just the plug-and-play guy that's a system guy or a guy that can drop back and throw it 50 times a game and never leave the pocket. I think the guys that truly have success are guys that can make good decisions, they're resilient, they're accurate, but more than all, like when the pocket breaks down, they can make a play. Yeah. And you look at the top quarterbacks in this league, and that's a trait they all share. And so, when we started our search for a quarterback, there was literally only, a couple guys on that list that we really got seriously talking to. And 2 of them are still playing right now. And, talking to, obviously we ended up signing Zach Edwards, and he literally defines that is playmaker. Another guy that had played for Marc Mattioli was Riley Hennessy. Yep. In Italy, and I got really close personally to Riley through this process, and I have been so excited for his success and what he's done, and I've had no doubt that he would be wildly successful at this level, especially when I saw what he did in his last GFL game in the German Bowl, against Potsdam, playing under pressure, and it was just like every decision he made was the right one. Yes. And I feel like in these pressure games, certain quarterbacks, they play better when the moment is bigger. And I feel like that's what Riley does. But we really thought in France, in this emotional world that we were in, I think Zach's personality with our team is such a good fit. He's such a good leader. And also at the time, Zach was the number 1 rated player in Europe. And so when we signed Zach, it sent a message to all these other guys we were talking to, what the team we were trying to build. We're going to go out and get the best players in Europe, and they're coming to Paris. And I think a lot of dominoes helped fall as we put our team together. And once Zach bought in, and Zach himself had a great network in Europe. And so, Zach has been such a soldier. And I want to tell a quick story about Zach is that, he obviously had a lot of success in Barcelona. He put up big numbers, especially, his second year there when Andrew Weidinger was his OC and they were lighting up the whole league, and I'm not going to lie. Head coach. I'm sorry. But also his OC, calling the plays. Yeah. And, I know there was a lot of debate around Zach even this week, like, he's never won a playoff game. He's never won the big one. I mean, shows like ELF Live, like this is a topic of debate,
these
right?
Guys,
and those
assholes.
Those guys, pundits. But Zach has only ever had one playoff game, and it was in Barcelona, and he was playing in Vienna. And Zach did not have the supporting cast. I mean, it was Kyle Sweet, a few other guys, but it's not the team he is now. And it took a while to get used to things in Paris. We were 6-6 last year, and there was a learning curve. I thought Zach played well.
We also played Stuttgart, Frankfurt, and Rhein.
Yeah, you guys had a
we
crazy
played Stuttgart,
start
Frankfurt,
to your
and
franchise.
Rhein.
That was wild.
We were 30-0 against every other team since then. Yeah. But the bottom line is, after the Rhein game that we lost at home this year, and we were up 14-3. We had it. Glenn Tunga played amazing second half, made a couple plays. I mean, he's been incredible all year. Incredible. And, Zach threw a pick on our last drive of the game. We lost the game. And I saw he really took that seriously. Yeah. And he really rededicated himself to the process. And Marc Mattioli started working with him a lot more personally. We have another owner in our group, Colin Henderson, want to give him a shout out. Unbelievable mindset coach. Him and Zach have now been meeting every week and have really been investing in the process. And now when you see Zach, like, he lives at the office now. Not that he didn't before, but like, he's completely invested. And just the growth I've seen in Zach and the dedication he's had this year, he's a different quarterback. And you look at the last 6-7 weeks, I mean, throwing for 6 touchdowns at Berlin, and throwing for over 400 yards at Frankfurt, and putting our team on his back against Madrid down the stretch when you couldn't even. I talked to him before that last drive. I go, "How do you feel?" He goes, "Feels like I'm holding a watermelon." Like the balls were all bloated.
Oh, it was such bad conditions.
And it was like one of those things. Well, let's find a way. And he did that last drive. He literally willed us to win that game. And so to see the growth of Zach, it's been so impressive. And I think it's another reason why we've made a major step this year is because I think Zach's made another step.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, because I think that at least coming into the playoffs, second in the league in passing yards and 6th in rushing yards. Like that's
first for like a couple hours.
Was he?
And then somehow Berlin found more yards.
Oh, they finessed it. Okay. All right. We'll talk about sensitive subject. Okay.
Yeah, second in passing, fourth.
First or second or fourth. Okay, there we go.
I mean,
yeah.
Just as it relates to Zach this year, as it relates to like Zach's performance this year, I think it's a great kind of example of what this league is able to do. It's different than what's been done before in Europe. Is the level of competition, the level of coaching, the level of intensity of the program. Like this is it really is for those who aren't in it every day or aren't watching it every day. The difference between like beer ball or like weekend ball and professional American football is that time in the office. It is watching teams, iron sharpens iron. Good teams play good teams. Teams practice professionally, have that structure in place. And that's what accelerates the product on the field, makes for those intense, exciting games. And Zach is a perfect example of somebody who we built an organization around and has stepped up and excelled to that challenge. And he personally has gotten better as a player. He's not like that, dominant American quarterback that can come over here and just throw and run over everybody just naturally. No, he bought in to the program Marc Mattioli built, to the structure and team and culture that we built, and has gotten better and is the unquestioned leader of the team.
Look at that touchdown when his helmet came off.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
It was so.
Embodies what our team is.
It's incredible. I'm so mad at myself. I was calling that game, and I had one slip up the entire game. I called Zach. I said Jeffries the first part of the play, and so he had this awesome touchdown, and I butchered it on the call.
If you watch the Paris Musketeers highlight of that play, I edited out your slip.
You did?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
I got
Thank
you, bro. Yeah, you did. You said Jeffrey's.
And I go, oh,
Yeah.
And then I knew, and right then I'm like, this is such a cool play, and I fucked it up. And
You didn't. You didn't. Watch our highlights.
Very good. Just watch the Paris Musketeers highlights. It's fixed.
It's fixed.
Magic of editing. That's what we like. We like video.
Magic chat.
Yeah, there we go. We like that. Magic chat. Okay, looking now. ELF football. We're in the semifinals. All this has culminated and led to Paris Musketeers being in the semifinals. Let's talk about both the semifinal games, if you will. Let's start with you guys. Paris Musketeers, Vienna Vikings. Now Zach getting to play against the Vikings again in Vienna again, but this time with a supporting cast, with an infrastructure that I think is a little bit more robust. No offense to Barcelona, but then he was in Barcelona. He was kind of just doing it all then. What are your guys' thoughts on this game? What do you think the Musketeers need to do well to walk away with a victory and get to the championship game?
I'm just here so I won't get fined. No, I mean, obviously, I have nothing but respect for the Vikings program. You know, playing in Austria, playing head-to-head against them. Like, I don't know if there's a better coached team in Europe, a more fundamental team in Europe. And I think for the Musketeers, I think we need to play loose but focused. You know what I mean? I think we're an emotional team. I think as long as we play smart and don't like boil over. Yeah. You know what I mean? I really feel like, you know, Vienna is going to be, you know, they've been in these games, they've been in these battles, and I think we're battle tested now. You look, we've won 5 games this year decided by less than 8 points in the last 8 minutes. And I think we've won these close games. We have a belief in it. But I think for us to win, I think we need to be ourselves and literally live that motto. It's about us. Like, it's not about who we're playing. It's not about a packed stadium in Austria with 10,000 fans. It's we need to do the things that have got us here. I know that sounds super cliche, but we need to be ourselves. We don't need to, like, you know, we were joking about it. Like, our team does not play good when they walk off the bus and they all got the game face on and they're all serious. It's like when our guys got the headphones on, they're nodding their head, they're dancing. That's when we're having fun. And I think for us, you know, we feed off the emotion of the game, and I think as long as we can keep that in control and do the little things, I think we'll be all right.
Well, what was the value word? Salubrity. We need a little of that. Okay, yeah, there we go. Yeah, so we're gonna have be a little salubrious this weekend.
Yeah, just a little salubrious.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah. John, you got anything else to add on that?
Yeah. So I mean, Jason lost to when he played. He lost to the Vienna Vikings a couple times with Tyrol.
I lost some heartbreakers, bro. Dude. So Max will always remind me of this. Our co-offensive coordinator played for the Vienna Vikings, and in 2009, you know, you play 2 leagues at once. And I have the weirdest loss in my entire history. We were up 20 points with 2 minutes to go, and we lost, and I never got the ball back. They scored, onside kick, scored, onside kick, scored, lost.
They recovered 2 onside kicks?
I think so, something like that.
That's like a 1 in a billion
It was like ridiculous.
chance.
And
damn.
So, yeah, and my high school rival team, like my high school, my town growing up in Puyallup, Washington, we had 2 high schools, and we were the Rams, they were the Vikings, they were purple. Like, I've been going against Vikings my whole freaking life, man.
So you're ready for this weekend.
I am ready to get over this hump. But as John says, I played the Vikings, but John's actually beat Vikings in Paris.
Yeah, in 2009, that same year, we played against each other. It was the Euro Bowl tournament or whatever.
Yeah.
And we went to Vienna and we beat Vienna. Paris beat Vienna in Vienna, and our OC was a receiver, like you said. And yeah, I mean, I think both of our journeys have taken us through Vienna, and here we are back 15 years later doing it again.
It all comes full circle. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. The thing you said is so true, though, about the Musketeers being battle-tested. I mean, especially when you look at these last couple of games against Madrid and against Munich, these like coming down to the wire. You had to be gutsy to win on the end. My criticism, I love the Vienna Vikings. My criticism of them, especially coming in this weekend, is they haven't had like a game of substance. I was looking at it today to prep for ELF Live. I think since week 5 or week 6, maybe. It's been a long time since they've been in any sort of a battle. And I don't even know if you could call it just kind of a 1-score, 2-score game. So that'll be interesting. Plus, they're coming off back-to-back buys. That's a little bit, I think 1 bye at this point in the season. That's nice, get healthy. But 2, maybe a little bit rusty, could be. So we'll see how that plays. You guys hope so? Obviously, you hope so. How about then? So I won't make you talk too much anymore about that game. How about though looking at the other semifinal game, rematch of last year's championship, Surge, Ryan Fire. What are your thoughts on this?
It was funny. We were talking about this last night. I mean, you can talk a little bit more about the football, and I'll talk about a little bit just how interesting this is for the league. I mean, to have 4 teams, 3 countries. There won't be a rematch of the championship game next year. You have a new franchise. You have the reigning champion. You have the runners-up. You have the undefeated 12-0 team from Austria. I mean, the storylines are there. This is, I'm excited. I'm excited about watch us on Saturday, but to watch that game. Can Stuttgart stop Glenn? We couldn't stop Glenn. No one has been able to stop Glenn all year. Can Stuttgart stop Glenn? Can they, Nick?
I think they can. I mean, they do have the second best rush defense in the league.
I don't know, but then you got to deal with Harlan Kofi. Harlan Kofi had 4 touchdowns last week. I mean, those guys, let's say they have a hell of a program, hell of a team. I'm not saying Stuttgart doesn't. I just, I'm not going to pick anybody, but I don't know who would I rather beat in the championship game.
That's a good. Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Judging by our last Ryan game, maybe I hope Stuttgart wins. I mean, I think for me, to echo what John said, and obviously we spend so much time with each other, we probably talk about the same things, but just to see what both of these 2 programs have done, what Stuttgart has done the last 2 years, what the Ryan Fire has done, since Tom Sula got there, and to me, that's exciting to see the best teams play each other. You know what I mean? It's really interesting to see, like you said, Stuttgart's run defense against Glenn Tunga. Can they still stop the pass game? Because that's the thing about Ryan Fire that makes them so difficult. My quick analysis is like pick your poison, right? And like how many guys are you going to commit to the box? Are you going to stop the run at all costs and hope you hold up in the back? Or are you going to just sort of try to hedge both? I know, Stuttgart can be very different defensively based on who they're playing. So, that's a really interesting matchup to me. And I think the Ryan Fire defense, not enough people are talking about them.
I know. Yeah,
they're incredible, man. And my big question is can Stuttgart consistently move the ball and score against them? I think you can score against Ryan, but the question is all game, right. And it's curious because Ryan sort of has this, I don't want to call it their formula, but they always start fast and they jump on teams. And the question is it's almost like Mike Tyson's punch out. Can you make it past the first minute? Yeah. You know what I mean? And then if you do, okay, now it's a ball game into that second half. Because if they get that lead on you, they're going to pound it down your throat. They're going to pin their ears back on defense because they know that you got to throw it. Yeah. And that's no recipe. So I would say, the Surge need to start fast and they need to get to an early lead or have it be even into that fourth quarter. And then at that point, anything can happen.
It's funny you say that about the Ryan Fire defense because we talk so much about their offense and Jadrian and Glenn, and even because we host DLF Live every week. And I was today prepping for the show and I looked Ryan Fire's #1 statistically in defense. We haven't talked about him one time because they're so overshadowed by their offense. But then looking also, at the Stuttgart Surge, they're co-defensive coordinators, 2 guys that I played for and with, and they have a really cool dynamic of being co-defensive coordinators. And then when I talked to him this week, you gotta stop Glenn.
No, you do. And I also think going back to the defensive part of that, the Ryan Fire are interesting because they play 2 Americans in the secondary, right? Yes. At safety positions, which is basically all right, we're going to take our fastest, most experienced guys and take away that deep half of the field, or the deeper half. And then they have really athletic guys. They have Tony Anderson, French player, who really has played well, kind of coming down into more of a nickel spot this year. He's really impressed me. It's funny. As we were getting ready to start the Paris Musketeers, I actually came over here with NFL Network, and we did a story on Aaron Donkor because he was playing for the Seattle Seahawks, and he came up through the International Pathway Program and how he started at the Dusseldorf Panthers and how he learned about American football and what he's all about. And now, his time in the NFL is over, was just kind of a special teams guy for the Seahawks. Comes back over, and now he's coming off the edge. And I don't think their front 7 get enough credit. for the Rhein Fire. They're serious.
I think they're overshadowed, at least like in the ELF media world of people talking, overshadowed by talking about Glenn all the time, talking about Jadrian now here in the second half of the season. It's been incredible.
Who's your MVP of the league this year?
I mean, it has to be Glenn.
It doesn't have to be.
I wish, what I would say, ask me after the playoffs, because I think that we have to see in some of these playoff games, because a lot, like my criticism of some of these not criticism, but the only thing like remains to be seen is how are they going to play in the big games, semis and the championship. So I'll tell you after.
Is it a regular season award, or is it like basically voted up on through the
How's
semis?
it do it? In the NFL, they do it the night before the Super Bowl, don't they?
Yeah.
We are doing that
we're
doing that for honors,
here.
but I think that the
Who
the
votes
awards
for it?
are. It's a combination. Like I got to put in my votes, and but it's I guess
Apparently we know who you voted for.
Search all the way.
He would make a great offensive player.
But I think who's that? There you go. Who would?
With our coach on the way here. We were talking with our coach on the way here, and I mean, I think one guy that we're going to see this weekend is Ben Holmes, and how I think because of maybe their schedule, and I know he was hurt for a little bit, but if you watch film on this guy, like this is a professional quarterback, and
he has not got enough love.
he is not. Ben VP,
Except from Alex.
Alex, run it, but Alex is right. I mean, you watch the film on this guy, and watch the way he sets and where his eyes go and what he's working through, his progressions, and just the way he handles the ball and is on the field. You can tell that this is a professional quarterback. And so there's probably no one else in the league like that plays the way he does, and we have to stop him this weekend.
For sure. And speaking of, I told you guys this is the first imported podcast I've done for a while because I've been doing the ELF stuff. The last imported podcast was with Ben Holmes, and he's an awesome guy. He's got a really interesting story. We talked about like the cool stories of these guys, and a guy that has been phenomenal. It was interesting talking to Coach Kalaikai this year before the season, and obviously he's been in Europe forever. He's recruited imports forever, and he said, it's always kind of a crapshoot when you're pulling over a new American, especially a quarterback. Is he going to hit? Is he going to miss? And Coach Kalaikai said, this is as sure as you can be, as sure as I've ever been that a quarterback is going to hit in Europe. And he really has. Like, he's been great.
I think people, because Vienna hasn't had the same strength of schedule as some other teams, I think people can diminish them a little bit. Right. I think they're every bit as good as they've always been, and I think Chris does an amazing job of bringing over imports, and he always has. Like, you look at the record of Vienna Vikings quarterbacks, they've always been the best in Europe, and he has a very good track record of bringing over new quarterbacks into Europe and breaking them in and winning championships and stuff like that. So, yeah, I definitely think Ben is as underrated as he could be. Yeah. Because, everyone's talking down the stretch about, our game against Madrid or, Stuttgart playing the Raiders, and, they're not, they have bye weeks or, other games like that. So, it's going to be every bit as tough to stop him.
You got Ben, Glenn, Zach, and Riley all there right here at the end. So it's going to be fun for everyone to watch.
I mean, these are like real stars of the league, and it's cool to have these guys.
People are like almost not talking about Jadrian this year. And,
I know.
I know they started a little slow, but like once they kind of figured out their own identity this year, he's been every bit as good as he was last year.
Yep,
when he threw 50 touchdowns.
I just did the breakdown on him because we talked about him last week. Since week 7, he has thrown 24 touchdowns and 2 picks, or 3 picks maybe, and his completion percentage has been 75%. So, like, of course, he had a little bit of woes in the first half of the season trying to figure out their 2024 identity. Glenn just picked up the slack there. But, yeah, I think because of that slow start, we've just forgotten about Jadrian this year. Like, he's been fantastic, especially in the stretch.
Well, and I think that's you look at the recipe. Like, if any of the clubs want to see what it takes. It's the same thing in the NFL. You look at the top teams, they pretty much always have a great quarterback that's all the teams left, or they have this unbelievable defense and kind of a good game manager at quarterback. But, if you want a blueprint, if you're an incoming ELF team, they say success leaves clues, right? And I think that the one DNA of all these teams is they have really good coaching, really good culture, and a really good quarterback. And it's funny what happens when you put those things together.
Absolutely. You say you listen to some like NFL pundits and media people that talk about you got to get the quarterback and the coach right, and you can get everything else kind of falling into place. Speaking of which, a little hypothetical game for you guys. Obviously, you started a program from scratch. You got your head coach, you got your quarterback, you got all of your players. You have to do this again. If you were to start another franchise, you can't get Coach Mattioli, you can't get Zach Edwards, and you have to make those early decisions again. Which coach are you going to grab, and which quarterback are you going to go after? Again, excluding the ones you have, any Musketeers.
Well, I mean, I think Belichick's available now. So, yeah, I think, if let's just hypothetically say we were starting London, perhaps, right? We're not, but it would be fun. We could. So, yeah, I mean, I think, I think probably, you look at, I mean, any of the coaches in the left playing right now are incredible. I mean, I think Jordan, what he's done with the Surge, I mean, to start a program with Jordan would be incredible because the culture he's going to bring, the commitment he's going to bring. I think, what Vienna's done. The problem is I don't think you can take any of these coaches away from their current situations. That's what happens when you start marrying German and Austrian girls. I mean, I don't think you're ever leaving this crib, bro. But, I have a hard time answering those questions. But, I think any of these guys, I think you could build a franchise around, this is a safe political answer, any of the coaches left in the semifinals and any of the quarterbacks. I think you get one pair of those guys, and I think you'd be off to a good start.
That's a good political answer. We accept that here on Imported. He took both. Okay.
No, I mean,
John, you got
this is a great question because there are teams out there looking for great coaches, and there's coaches out there looking to advance their career. I mean, obviously, I'm going to not talk about any existing head coaches, but I don't want to lose any coaches, and two, I don't want to offer you any of mine. I want to keep our coaches, but I mean, guys like Max Kostler, like this is the type of guy where this is a European coach who grew up, cut his teeth here, knows how football works in the States, knows how a program is run. If I was starting to start a program, I would invest in a guy like that. John Booker was the head coach at Leipzig before they folded. We were lucky to get him to come kind of run behind the scenes of a program. I think he's valuable to our organization immensely. I definitely don't want to lose him. But like these are the type of guys.
These guys are not available.
These guys are not available. But I'm just hyping up my coaches because like they are the type of guys that like, that's who we look for when we brought them in, and like those are the types of coaches I would. Andrew Weidinger. He's he was the head coach of Barcelona. He's there with Ryan now. But I mean, that's a guy. I mean, that's a head coach. That guy is a head coach. Look at what he can do. So I think there's a lot of talent here in Europe that knows European football. That would be ready to step up to that kind of role.
Yeah, I would also say that I would also look at like maybe some imports that are finishing their career that have been over here that are young guys. Like again, there's some players in this league that are kind of wrapping up their careers that would probably make fantastic European coaches because when we started Paris with our whole team, we know what it's like to be an import. And we know what's important to them and to all of our players and trying to create an atmosphere where you can focus on ball and you can play. And that's hard, man, when it's expensive to run a team and revenues are hard to come by in this league and fighting to close that gap between the two. It's not easy to offer, things like we do our players laundry and not a lot of teams in Europe do. But we said, you know what? I don't want a guy getting off the subway in the metro and throwing his cleats on the side of the field. Like I want him to come into a locker room at least and have a bag hanging there of clean stuff for them. You know what I mean? Little things like that make a huge difference for players. And I also think, starting a program, I do think it would be amazing for more young coaches to come over here. And one thing that's not lost on us, and I hope an NCAA or NFL team's watching this right now, but like you look at the growth of Marc Mattioli from when he came in. Imagine, he was the youngest coach ever in the SEC when he was with Vanderbilt. He cut his teeth at Stanford. That's his resume. Two incredibly, I couldn't have been, well, I might have been able to be, but most people couldn't be a coach at Stanford as a GA. He's getting head coach reps right now. You know what I mean? And like, we always joke about this, but sometimes like, I work a lot with ESPN. And ESPN, they have all these producers that are amazing at telling stories. And then the very best of them gets brought up to be like a manager, where they no longer tell stories, they're managing people. This is a completely different skill set to manage people as it is to shoot and edit a documentary, right? And I feel like for football, it's the exact same. It's a completely different skill set to be a head coach as it is to be a coordinator, right? One thing is about tactics. One thing is about the X's and O's, watching film. A head coach has to manage the entire army. He's got to manage, operations for the team. He's got to manage budget. He's got to, take the call at 11 p.m. when a star player just had something happen to his dad, all these things. And so I look at what Marc Mattioli is doing over here as an unbelievable career path. I mean, we hope he stays in Paris as long as he wants, right? And I hope he's here for the next decade. But I'm also, not naive enough to know that this guy and the level that he's getting to now, he doesn't need to go back to the U.S. and be a quality control guy at the Miami Dolphins, right? He could go back and be a head coach right now because he's got these reps. And I feel like it'd be cool if the European League story is out there more and you get these young guys that are, quarterbacks coaches or, defensive coordinators in college football that come over here for a couple of years and take the training wheels off as a head coach. It'd be really cool to see.
I absolutely love that. And I agree 100%. I mean, you think, look at this experience that a guy like Mattioli has now. And he's below 40 and he's been a head coach here and, gotten to build that resume and probably in a different way than you would if you just stayed in the States there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a whole different it's a whole different mindset being a head coach as it is being someone else. But man, that's a good hypothetical, man. That's a good game.
Guys, before I let you go, a little selfish segment for me here. You guys are both a little bit older than me. Obviously, we have a lot of similarities, and in the European football world and that experience, you guys are both successful entrepreneurs as well, balancing the European football world, also entrepreneurship. Can you give me some advice? Any advice, any wisdom from where you're at? You can throw back towards me as I start sort of I'm kind of doing a little bit of both of the European football world and some entrepreneurship.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the first piece of advice, honestly, is what makes you successful as a football player is the same thing that will make you successful at business. And what I mean is it's hard work, it's attitude, it's perseverance, it's communication, it's teamwork. I mean, for me, I launched a video production business, and when I started to realize that I could just flat out outwork people, like I started just leapfrogging other businesses and getting calls I should have never got because I literally just put the time in and I mastered the fundamentals and I had a good attitude and I showed up every day, and when things went bad, I didn't crawl into a hole. I got up and fight. And I think that's the same thing that's trying to make our Musketeers organization good, is that like it's not easy, man. Like I know it's easy for us to sit up here and we have this cool brand and good players and all this stuff, but like it's a freaking battle, man, every day. To get the budgets right and to get the logistics right and to, I wake up every morning saying, how are we going to put more people in the stands in Paris? And like, that's not easy. And so I would say the first piece of advice is like all these intangibles that you thought were just sort of a side benefit of playing football. No, that's the real stuff. You know what I mean? Like my son went to this farm camp last week. I have an 8-year-old son, or he's about to be 8. And there's no curriculum. They just go out and they like play by this river. And I was talking to the head guy afterwards. I said, well, what did you guys work on today? And he goes, we worked on courage. And I'm like, can you imagine like just saying, instead of like we're going to train courage. Like how cool is that? And I guess my second piece of advice would be like fire aim ready. Go for it. Like you can sit on your couch for years and have a spreadsheet about how doing a football team in Europe makes sense, and you got to just go for it. You know what I mean? You can always figure it out. You can always go raise money. You can always bring friends into it. Someone always wants to help you. My first advice would be like, stop making excuses. Stop doing like what you're doing with the app right here. So cool, man. Just go for it. And I think the final thing, and I think this is the hardest thing for two guys with wives and children is to remain that balance, and that's the hardest thing, man. We're over here, we're pursuing a passion, and yet we're on the phones, texting our wives in the middle of the night, trying to apologize for being gone, and John has 3 children, and you don't want to accomplish everything in the world and end up alone, and that is easier said than done, man. Like, my wife will send me 100 Instagram clips of these. Hey, look at this successful entrepreneur balancing his family, and it's like a shot to the gut, man. It's hard. And so, yeah, I think the final thing is like balance might not be, 50% of your life on work and 50% on business. It's just being very intentional. Like when you're in your business, like we get a high off of this, man. Like this is exciting. And I think for us, it's like, do that. But like then when you do unplug and be where your feet are, cherish your fiance and spend time. I mean, I look at the books over here and like, I think you already are grounded in that, but I would just say, yeah, don't forget your family and to find balance in it.
Amazing, man. Thank you.
That's getting hard to follow a little bit. No, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to, football's been a part of my life, a long time, and I think it's driven me and taught me lessons that I didn't even know until I left football, and I started working in retail development and construction and design. That's my kind of my trade, when I'm not doing football, and it taught me, and I realized that like I work harder and I don't want to say smarter. I have my ceiling is much higher than a lot of the people around me because of football, and it was something that I discovered in the professional world. It has allowed me to excel in what I do now, and I feel like my North Star throughout all of this was the fact that I really did love football, and I loved what it gave to me, and I saw the future in it. In Europe and with what we're doing now. So I guess my advice then is truly like, if you were able to identify your North Star on a project, or what drives you every day to get up in the morning and what you think about it, what you can't get out of your mind, you can't stop. You owe it to yourself to chase it. And if you don't, you will wake up in 80 years and look back at your life and say, man, I really wish I pursued that thing. I took that call. I did that trip. I wrote that email. I raised that money or whatever it is. And I think one of the things that, I hope that carries over to our team and our coaches and our players is that they see us and they see how much we believe in this. Like, we believe in American football in Europe. We believe in American football in Paris. And it's not just because we love football. It's because we know it'll work. We know it is inevitable, and this is where things are going. So, again, I don't know if that's distilled down enough, but I would say follow your North Star.
Amazing, man. Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much. It was an awesome podcast. Absolutely loved it. I think the people are going to love it. Paris Musketeers, Jason, John, thank you for coming on the Imported Podcast. Good luck this weekend.
Once an import, always an import.
Always an import. There we go. Thanks, everybody.